So let's say you're into yoga or Pilates, or maybe you dabble in gymnastics like me. Either way, you know being flexible is key to doing what you love. That's why Smoothie King created this Stretch and Flex smoothie for people like us, with whole fruits and organic veggies, plus type 2 collagen. Make it part of your daily fitness routine to support flexibility and joint health. So try the Stretch and Flex smoothie in tart cherry or pineapple kale. Order online today for pickup or delivery. Smoothie King, rule the day.
Hike the trail? Check. Order takeout? Check. Schedule heart checkup? Done. We've all adapted to a new way of living. Keep your healthcare on schedule with Johns Hopkins Medicine, where your health and safety are our highest priorities. We're ready to care for you through virtual and in-person visits across Maryland and the greater Washington region. Your health, our experts, safely caring for you. Schedule your care now. Learn more at hopkinsmedicine.org/safe.
Welcome to the Stephen Shiels Radio Show. Today I am with Sonic Yogi from Insight Timer. He is a meditation teacher, musician, and he's published courses. How are you?
I'm great, Stephen. How are you?
Good. I first came across your work on Insight Timer, and I was very fascinated with your Tibetan singing bowls. And I did meditation with that, and there was quite a very calming effect. How did you come up with that sort of style?
Well, it was a little bit of a random thing. I experienced quite a bit of anxiety and stress in my life, and as I was recovering and learning to find ways to relax through that process, I actually began to notice how vibrations and sounds were affecting my body.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, during the deepest time of anxiety, I was actually unable to listen to classical music, which was sort of what I always went to before for relaxation.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
But I found that my mind was not able to really process all of the musical information,
mm-hmm.
Like the chords and the harmonies and all of those things. I found that stressful. And someone mentioned to me as I was reaching out to different people for assistance, someone mentioned sound healing style music.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that very relaxing to just allow my brain to sort of not have to focus on any musical elements and to simply feel the frequencies and feel the simplicity of those vibrations. And I found that my voice and humming and singing certain tones actually made me feel better. And then maybe a few months after that, I was able to attend a sound therapy conference, and they had singing bowls there, and I just really loved the sound. And sometime after that, I began to collect them.
Yeah, because I've noticed on your Insight Timer you've done some live streaming with the singing bowls, and it gives audience a chance to sit and meditate with them. When you are meditating with singing bowls, do you have a technique that you do, or do you encourage the audience to find their own meditation techniques?
I do have some techniques that I generally like to recommend. For instance, focusing on the breath and using the breath rhythm to guide the body and mind into a more meditative state is one I prefer, and I like to mention that, and it's very simple for people to follow a rhythm with their own breath. So that's a great technique. And then, of course, there are other techniques like using an internal mantra or doing a body scan. But in general, on the Insight Timer platform, I assume that most of the listeners, since it's a meditation app, already have some meditation practice of their own. And I feel that the sounds themselves can really enhance any practice. and help assist the mind and the body in coming into those states of meditation.
Where do the Tibetan singing bowls originate from?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure that anyone knows exactly for sure. They seem to have originated before Tibetan Buddhism. And there's some information out there that they were present in the culture before that, which was called Bon, which was a not necessarily Buddhist, but some of those practices have continued in Tibetan Buddhism. And so it's one of those mysterious things where no one is 100% sure on how they originated or what they were used for. But they're very prevalent now in various Buddhist temples. You'll find different types of singing bowls throughout the East and Asia. And so some call them Tibetan singing bowls, some call them Himalayan singing bowls. There are also different types of singing bowls from Vietnam and things like that.
Yeah, because they got a very, I think, a very good calming presence on the brain as well. I've used Tibetan singing bowls for bed before sleeping. Do you recommend people to lie in bed and meditate before bed, or sit in a chair, or sit in a traditional Buddhist way? What's your approach?
I think it's really open to the person listening, and so I think they can be used for any of those purposes. And I prefer to use them during meditation, but I know some people like to lay down. The sounds themselves can help us to release melatonin.
With technology now and, all our smartphones, how do you recommend people to meditate with technology for your practice?
Well, I don't necessarily recommend using the technology. I think it's nice that we can use these devices to play the music over. I think we also have to be careful about using them too much. The technology of just looking at the light the blue light can affect our melatonin. And so some people might have trouble sleeping if they use their phone too much. But simply using it to listen to the music shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, have you put your work on CD or cassette tapes, or have you gone digital?
Mainly digital. I do have one album that I released last year called Be the Love You Seek. And I pressed some CDs for that, but by and large, most of my work is digital only.
I've noticed your website, you've got some MP3 downloads and you've got some work there. Did you publish most of your work from your website to Insight Timer, or you just only give some of your stuff for free to Insight Timer?
Some of it is exclusive to Insight Timer. And some of it is that work that I previously had produced.
And how much preparation goes in to preparing your work?
Quite a bit. I would say the first step for me was collecting the singing bowls and choosing the tones that worked well together. And the second step is, of course, recording the tracks. And I was a musician before I started exploring the sound therapy, and so I had already developed some skill around recording.
Mm-hmm.
So I began to record. So that would be kind of the next step, and then I really take each track and I'll edit it or mix it, and then meditate with it for some time and sort of feel how the track works for meditation. And sometimes I might find that it needs something here or there. I might need to remove some sounds or add some sounds. So that's somewhat how the process goes.
So there's a lot of work involved, and I think it's fantastic what you've been doing on Insight Timer. How did you come across Insight Timer? Did they approach you, or you approach them?
I was releasing my music for free, and when I started the project Sonic Yogi, it was really a side project in some respects. It was really a healing process for me, and then I began to produce these recordings for myself and then also family and friends with the intention of helping people to relax and release stress and anxiety. And so I began to put them out on SoundCloud and things like that. And that grew gradually over time. And at some point, I believe a few years later, Insight Timer contacted me and said that they had heard the recordings and asked, if I would like to put them on the Insight Timer app. And so I said, yeah, that sounds great.
Insight Timer has come a very long way, because I used it. I've been using it for 3 years. And I remember the early days they were doing the daily meditation. Then they started adding the chat. Now they're gone into live streaming. Hopefully soon they can keep the replay. Now they've got groups as well. I started a group called the Law of Attraction, and people can comment. Now they're doing a daily morning challenge in January. Are you participating in that?
I'm not. I just saw about it yesterday.
Bugger. Be good if you could.
Well, yeah. I don't have much say in those things. I am going to be offering individual mentoring sessions in January, which is a new feature. So I'll be able to meet with people one-on-one if they want to have, some questions answered and things like that.
And you've mentioned too, you've suffered anxiety. I suffer anxiety too, and meditation does help. I'm a musician. You play music. Do you play an instrument, or what do you do music-wise?
I studied classical guitar, and that was my music degree, was in classical guitar. And so that was my main instrument. And then about 10 years ago, I began learning flute, Native American flute and things like that.
Yeah, I'm a clarinetist. So I did clarinet in classical as well. So got to play all the symphony excerpts. I did some duet playing with classical guitar as well, because classical guitar, I think it's an underrated instrument for some reason. Not a lot of people do it. It's more contemporary. So did you learn to read music, or did you play from memory live? What was your teaching in classical guitar, and what did you go to college for it as well? What college did you study at?
I studied at the University of Georgia, which is in Athens, Georgia. And so I learned all of the things that most musicians would learn in music school, and I learned to read music and all of those things. And then I also studied with a classical guitarist named Christopher Parkening, who would teach in the States in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And so I studied with him some as well. So I love the classical guitar and really put a lot of effort into it back in those days.
Yeah. Did you play with the traditional way or sitting down? What way were you taught to play the classical guitar?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I learned all the traditional ways with my foot on the footstool and using fingernails on my right hand to pick the strings. So I learned all of those traditional ways, and now I'm not so traditional at all.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, I really evolved into my own playing style. After college, I made a few albums of only classical guitar, and then I began to play with the cellist as a partner, and we created music that we called classical fusion.
Mm-hmm.
And since there wasn't very much repertoire for the cello and the guitar, we ended up arranging a lot of our own music. We composed music, and then we would do arrangements of things like Pink Floyd and things like that.
Did you listen to any Jimi Hendrix growing up, or the Beatles, or did you get into rock music?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved all of that music, classic rock. So when I started with guitar when I was a early teenager, I basically was learning classic rock and things like Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, those kind of things.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix, he was quite an icon. I think it was the 70s. He was quite big and played at the Woodstock Festival as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had the Beatles and the Rolling Stones as well. Surprisingly, Mick Jagger's still alive today. AC/DC, did you get to listen to them growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved all of that music.
Were you a vinyl or a cassette person?
Cassette was really what most people were listening to back in those days. And then I guess vinyls come back. So it's interesting.
And when you learnt music, did you have to do transcribing, like listen to it and try and learn it? Or what was your process with learning guitar?
A little bit of both. I would learn things either from the music or in the early days, maybe even tab. And then I would learn to pick out things by ear and learn them that way.
What about tuning? Did you rely on a tuner, or did you learn to tune by ear?
In the very beginning, I definitely used a tuner, and then as I continued, I began to learn to do it by ear.
Because you got so many different kilohertz with tuning. You can go 440, and then there's 441. Makes it a different sound as well. I think some orchestras are tuning to 444 kilohertz as well. So I think the Berlin Philharmonic, they experiment with their tuning to get that sound as well. I used to practice tuning a lot on the clarinet. There were certain notes. There were the open throat notes that were flat, so you had to pitch it up sharp. And especially orchestral playing, you got to blend in with the orchestra. Did you experiment with other styles like jazz or Indian raga music?
I did experiment with jazz on the guitar, and of course the guitar has so many different styles that can be explored. So
yeah, did you have an electric guitar growing up?
Yes. My first electric guitar was a Les Paul copy.
Nice.
It was from a store here in the States called Sears.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like a department store. And they had their own brand of guitar. So that was my first guitar.
Was it made in America, the Les Paul copy, or Japan?
I don't remember at this point. I have no idea.
Yeah, because one time everything was either made in Japan or the States, and now it's all made in China. But the quality was much better. If it was made in America, it was a Les Paul, and you knew it was a Les Paul. I think there's some custom models going for about $50,000 US.
Yeah, there's definitely much more expensive now.
And the old Fender Stratocasters that Jimi Hendrix played as well. They had that vintage blues rock sound. Great piece of equipment. Jimi Hendrix, he played the left-handed, a right-handed guitar, flip it around, broke the rules, didn't care. Light his guitar on fire on stage at the end of a concert, Yeah, did you ever go to Woodstock, or did you go to any live music in that generation?
Not in that generation. That would have been a little bit before my time, but I certainly love, a lot of that music, and so much of the music from the late 60s, early 70s has influenced everything that's come since then.
The Beatles were a big influence, and still today they're being listened to still on Spotify everywhere. It's like we all remember the Beatles, Elvis Presley, the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix. For some reason, their name remains out there, and I think it's such a shame the Beatles broke up, because if they were still alive, I think people would go and watch them play live,
Yeah, it's classic music and great songwriting.
Yeah, classical music for me, where I studied Brahms, Robert Schumann as well. Mozart was very popular. Did you experiment with any Mozart in your undergrad degree?
There's not a lot of music from Mozart for the guitar. Fernando Sor, who's a Spanish composer, wrote a series of variations on Mozart. And that's about as close as we had for the classical guitar.
And you're doing live gigging at the moment. Tell the audience what type of gigs you do.
Well, I play live sound baths, and so that's a combination of, I'll play the guitar, and I also play the singing bowls. So I have metal singing bowls, as well as crystal singing bowls, and I also play the flutes and gong and a few other instruments. And essentially, I usually play for meditation groups or sometimes yoga classes, and I play these sounds with the intention of helping people to get into a more meditative state.
Yeah, there's so many meditation techniques out there. Like you got chakra meditation, law of attraction. Are you familiar with law of attraction, and do you meditate on that stuff, or what's your opinion on law of attraction?
I don't have that much of an opinion on that specifically. I suppose I understand the basics of it, but I really think about, in terms of my approach, is really about how to use meditation to release stress,
Mm.
and in that process of releasing stress, I believe that we get an understanding of our nature, our true self.
Mm.
I think when we operate from that place, and we take action from our truest intention, that we do create, or have the tendency to create, the outcomes that we want.
Mm.
And so I guess in some sense that could be similar to that law of attraction.
Mm.
So those are some of my thoughts around that.
It's very interesting because I think Einstein did quote the law of attraction, and Thomas Edison very long time ago. If you want something bad enough, I don't know, the universe can manifest it for you, but you have to put the work in. You have to really want it inside. It's something I've been exploring for the last year and a half. It's interested me a lot. Tony Robbins might speak about it, Bob Proctor as well. But, goal setting. Have you used the vision board? Have you done any of that stuff?
I have not.
Mm-hmm.
Not personally, no.
Mm. That's stuff I'm looking at doing. It's a topic that it's interesting, and personal growth as well. Yeah, and there's a teacher, Dr. Joe Dispenza. I've been looking at his stuff, and people who have had pain for years and done his meditation were able to just live pain-free. I don't know why, I don't know how. With your work, have you had people say, I feel much better now, I'm cured?
I do have people to write me and tell me how the sounds have helped them, and that it's really helped to improve their situation in many different ways. So that's been a wonderful thing to get that feedback.
And that's the positive of it, and that's what meditation is good for. But you look at you got Buddhists where they're meditating 8 hours, 16 hours a day as well. Now, is that something they train to build up and do over time, or is that... Yeah, I've always wondered how they do that.
I suppose they build up. I personally have done a Vipassana meditation course, if you're familiar with that.
Yep. And
that's, based in Buddhism, and that course, they're able to meditate. I think it's around 10 hours. And so you wake up around 4 o'clock in the morning and start meditating at 4:30, and continue throughout the day, and do that for about 10 days in a row.
And is that all silence?
Is that what?
Silent meditation, like you can't speak to anyone doing that?
Yes, exactly. That's totally silent, and you're not supposed to speak to anyone during the 10 days.
Wow.
And you just sort of keep to yourself.
What about eating as well, and going to the bathroom and showering? Are you allowed to do all that, or do you have to... No, you got to meditate for 10 hours and that's it?
Well, no, you can go to the bathroom. And they provide the meals for you, so you don't have to worry about fixing your own meals. You just eat at those intervals, and it's all set up for you.
Yeah, because the founder of the Headspace app, Andy Purikombi, was a Buddhist, and that app's focused on some of their techniques. But when you go on these retreats, are you finding your own meditation technique, or are you doing what is advised for you to do?
Well, in the case of the Vipassana retreat, you're following their technique.
Mm-hmm.
And so their technique is very specific, and they advise you on that retreat to stay with their technique.
Mm-hmm.
And not really mix it with anything you've learned previously, so that you can really fully see how that technique works without any interference.
Now, I know a lot of Buddhists, when they meditate, sit in that traditional, I think, on the floor, legs, what's that traditional posture they use? Was that taught to you, or could you do it modern in a chair, lying down?
In the Vipassana teaching, they teach that you can do it in any way.
Yep.
And so there's people sitting the traditional way on a meditation cushion, and then also sitting in chairs and any way that they can be comfortable.
Mm. Part of my journey is if I watch something stimulating on Netflix or Amazon Prime and try to, meditate straight after, my brain's just going round and round and round.
Mm-hmm.
Should people just switch off for 20 minutes and find that time to really concentrate on meditating? Or can you do it at any time of the day? What's your advice with that?
I like to meditate in the morning, as right after I wake up,
Mm-hmm.
and before I really start thinking too much about my day.
Mm-hmm.
And then at night, I usually meditate right before bed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of carve out those times for myself as like sacred time that's just for that purpose. And especially after my experiences with anxiety, I found that it really helped me to just give myself a couple of hours at night before bed and shut off all of the TV and electronics, and just allow my mind to settle.
Yeah, because we've noticed during the lockdowns, technology went up so much because we had meetings on Zoom and Skype and phone and laptop, iPad. So it became, well, to be connected to the world, you needed a device. And I've noticed lately I'm on my phone so much more than before the lockdown happened.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have times of the day where you're like, no, I'm not touching my phone, I'm just gonna forget technology?
I haven't actually done that where I've just shut it down, but I definitely understand what you mean. And with all of the meetings and connections that we have to make online now, it feels, like a lot more than it was before all of this started.
Yeah, when I went on a meditation retreat about, I think it was 2018, I went on the day of my graduation. Went up to the Blue Mountains in Australia, and I just had my phone on flight mode the whole weekend because I just needed to get away from it, get out,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes just got to unplug the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I found a meditation retreat was good. It was more guided, not a Vipassana one. But do you recommend beginners to go on a Vipassana meditation, or how long should people wait before they try something like this?
I wouldn't recommend it for beginners.
Yep.
I had been meditating for several years before I went, and I was curious to see what something that would be. I would say it wouldn't really be suited for beginners. in general, when a person's meditating, of course, you're reaching into your subconscious to some degree, and there is a sort of process of mental healing that occurs. And so to do something that intensely focused, it's possible that it could be too much in that process of mental healing. It could be overwhelming.
Because there's a Buddhist technique taught on the headspace that where you just let the mind just go, just let it go, and you can do a silent. There's some, you do 10 days of silent practice. I explored a bit of that in silent, but I found that I can get a bit restless with silence, and I found if I put music on, Tibetan bowls is just good. It's just healing. But when you do these retreats, is it just complete silence altogether? So there's no Tibetan bowls, nothing. That's incredible. That is incredible. And it's, 10 hours a day you are meditating for?
Yes. There is, in the Vipassana, there is some chanting from the founder. S.N. Goenka is his name, and he does some, I guess, Buddhist chanting at the different intervals. So that happens during the course.
I've noticed that part of the Buddhist tradition is they're vegetarian and vegan as well, and they drink water, tea. Do you follow that lifestyle?
Yes.
With the vegetarian life, have you noticed, do you feel more healthier? Do you feel better?
I do feel good. I haven't eaten meat in many years, so it's hard for me to have a reference to what that was. But yes, and I think it's a good lifestyle from a health perspective, and there's plenty of research that shows that. And then I think it's in many ways good for the environment, and of course it's good for the animals.
Makes your immune system stronger as well. To beat COVID-19, you got to have a strong immune system.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's the thing with meat. It's very processed as well. I think vegetarian, because that's what we got fed, was just vegetarian food. It was just good to have a change and have tea, coffee. When you went on your retreat, were you able to have access to coffee, tea, or was it just simply just water and vegan diet?
It was vegan diet, and there was, I believe I remember there being tea in the evening. Yep.
So for future work, what are you planning for 2021 for Insight Timer?
I'm considering working on another course.
Yep, I've done your courses.
Thank you. So I'm considering a kind of a progression from that, and producing more music as well, and releasing that on the app as well.
How much work goes into making a course for Insight Timer?
For me personally, I spend several months doing it. So it takes quite a while. Most of what I'm doing has come from my own experience through meditation and things like that. And then what I try to do is balance that with science, and I research the things that I discover, and then balance that with the research and present that in the course. And I like to do that so that people can experience those ideas from a more grounded and scientifically proven place. And so I think that what I present, I want it to either be self-evident, meaning that people can sort of explore their own mind and determine whether something's true or not, or for there to be some scientific basis around it.
Have you experimented with binaural beats?
Yes.
Is it
I have
true?
some of those in my music as well.
Is it advised to be wearing headphones with binaural beats, and does it help with alpha brain waves?
It can. Of course, binaural, for those that don't know, bi means ear, and then aural, A-U-R-A-L, means ears. So if you're listening to a binaural beat, for example, what you're hearing is the difference between two tones, and that creates a rhythm or a beat. And so, for example, if there's the pitch of 100 hertz in the right ear and then the pitch of 105 hertz in the left ear, then as those two pitches come together, they create a beat of 5 hertz because they're different by 5 hertz. And so the idea is that beat of 5 hertz helps to entrain or synchronize the brain waves down into that state. So if someone creates a binaural beat in the range of, say, 8 hertz for alpha range, the idea is that listening to that over a certain amount of time will help the listener's brain waves to come into that place.
Yeah, because Kenneth, I think Soralis, he's got quite a fair bit of work with binaural beats and affirmations as well, and they do make you feel better, I think. And even if I'm doing some study, I'll put binaural beats on just to concentrate better. There was another technique I learned from the Headspace that was on focus. So, like just focusing on a pebble or a candle. You do the focus meditation. I had a big problem with concentration when I was studying music. My mind would just wander off when I was in a rest in the orchestra, and then I'd get lost. So I'd do these little exercises, and concentration was much better. When you were a musician, did you have problems with concentration and focus as well?
I found that music actually probably helped me to concentrate.
Yep.
And using my mind differently for example, just to learn to read music and things like that, I felt like it really helped me in some ways to sort of exercise those parts of my mind.
All right, thanks for listening to today's podcast with Sonic Yogi on Insight Timer. You can check him out. You can check out his website. I will put the links in the description. Please remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram and my Facebook page. Also, you can donate to my show on my GoFundMe page as well. Also, follow my work on Spotify and Amazon Music, and share this podcast with people you know. Thanks for listening to today's show. See you later.
Whether you're having a not moving off the couch while you watch the game kind of day, or a no time between conference calls kind of day, it can still be a delicious Dunkin' kind of day. And with Dunkin' now available on DoorDash, it's easier than ever to get your faves brought right to your door. So if you're looking for coffees, donuts, and breakfast sandwiches in the morning, craving some afternoon snack and bacon, or in need of Dunkin' refreshers for a PM pick-me-up, we've got you covered. Order now and get your faves brought to your door through Grubhub, Uber Eats, and DoorDash. Price and participation may vary. Exclusions apply. America runs on Dunkin'.
Hike the trail? Check. Order takeout? Check. Schedule heart checkup? Done. We've all adapted to a new way of living. Keep your healthcare on schedule with Johns Hopkins Medicine, where your health and safety are our highest priorities. We're ready to care for you through virtual and in-person visits across Maryland and the greater Washington region. Your health, our experts, safely caring for you. Schedule your care now. Learn more at hopkinsmedicine.org/safe.